Hi, my name is Misty Cox, and I have encountered several unexpected experiences that have had a huge impact on my life. The one I think of the most is the time that I had witnessed my mother having her first seizure. At the time I didn't know it, but she actually was suffering from epilepsy. Epilepsy is caused by irregular electrical discharges in the brain. Let me explain it to you this way. The average person has around 80 pulses of energy that moves in between their nerve cells and their brain per second. These pulses contribute to our emotions and our memory. Well, somebody who is experiencing an epileptic seizure is kind of having an electrical surge in the brain. They are having around 500 pulses of energy in between their nerve cells and their brain per second. That is a huge jump from 80. Somebody who has epilepsy, those electric surges could happen in a small portion of their brain, or they could happen throughout the entire brain. That is going to determine how severe the epileptic episode is. Some people might only have 1 or 2 seizures throughout their entire lives, and other people, they might have several a day. Usually somebody who is experiencing these electrical abnormalities in their brain, first they're going to start off with uncontrollable movement in their arms and legs and their whole entire bodies. That is what we know as seizures, and that is the number one identifier with epilepsy is seizures. They'll also have their state of consciousness will be messed with, like it'll change. They might be unconscious during the seizure, maybe a little unconscious after or before. Things that trigger seizures are usually flashing lights, the flickering of a television, loud sounds, drugs, alcohol, stress, a really bad day. And sometimes somebody might have a seizure and you might not really know what really triggered it. The good news for people with epilepsy is that it's not completely debilitating. Usually people who have epilepsy, there's about 75% of them that can still maintain their jobs and can still have to go to school. So their life isn't completely destroyed because they have epilepsy. It's also not a deadly illness. The only time it becomes deadly is if somebody goes into status epilepticus, and that is when a person starts seizing and they either remain seizing or they remain unconscious for 10 to 30 minutes. And what happens during that time is that a person's blood flow is reduced in their brain, and that can cause brain damage, and it can also cause death. About 100,000 people have problems with that, and about 50,000 people die from it. People will get epilepsy sometimes from illnesses. If somebody has Alzheimer's, that messes with their electric imbalance in their brain, and that could cause them to have issues. Sometimes head injuries can cause it. And some epilepsy is hereditary. There is actually around 3 million Americans who have been diagnosed with epilepsy, so it's actually fairly common. And there are several different types of epilepsy, and then there are around 30 different types of seizures that somebody could have with epilepsy. That can sometimes make epilepsy hard to diagnose and also to treat. Usually, doctors can figure out whether somebody has epilepsy by doing different types of tests. They might do an EEG, which measures the frequency of their brain waves. They also might do brain imaging, like an MRI or a PET scan. That'll put an image of the brain up on like a board or a computer so that they can actually see the brain and where the impulses are going off. They'll use blood tests. They'll also use behavior tests. Another way, how they will treat it is usually through medications. If medications don't work, they might go ahead and do surgery. They might cut the little bridge in between the left and right hemispheres of the brain. They might remove the outer layer of the brain. They also use nerve stimulation, and they'll also use diet, because some hereditary epilepsy is caused from being low in sugar, or usually it has problems with protein or carbohydrates. Usually people who are on medication, though, it works for them. Usually after like a year of taking it, the doctor will take them off of it, and if they don't have any seizures, then they don't have to take it anymore. Otherwise, they'll have to get back on it. If you're around somebody who's having a seizure, the best thing you can do is just make sure they're in a safe place, make sure they're not going to hurt themselves on anything, surround them with pillows. Usually, epilepsy isn't deadly, and it's not debilitating, and it can be treated. So that's the good news for anybody who has epilepsy. Is there any questions?